Now, please welcome Molly Klein, new chair, incoming chair of our Friends Committee, and Sam Fiorello, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Danforth Center, as they join me on stage.
Wow, thank you, Jim. It's a real pleasure to be up here with you and Sam. I'm Molly Klein, and I'm a plant science and agriculture advocate and community volunteer. And my husband and I, we've lived in St. Louis. This is our 32nd year, and have raised 2 children. So we're pretty close to native, and our kids are native St. Louisans. So I'd like to build on that. Wow, 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 what we just heard. Now, I've never played any major sports in my life, but I do know something about plant science, having been trained as one and having worked in that area. But you know what? We are major league in plant science. This team is going nowhere. We've got you. We are so glad that you are here.
Did she just say we're going nowhere?
And thank you to our visionaries. Yeah, no trading. You've won the World Series, the Super Bowl, etc. So now it's time. We've got a few minutes. We've had some questions that were submitted by our attendees. So what we're going to talk about right now, the themes of these questions are summarized, if you will, from what our attendees have submitted ahead of time. So, Jim, you just mentioned about the building expansion. And I've got to say, when I drive up and down Lindbergh Boulevard in the neighborhood here, it seems like music to my ears, hearing those cranes and the noise and the rumble. And so expansion is huge. And then we've heard, Sam, your work at Bridge Park and with the partners, what that's doing for innovation. So let's take this as a first theme. So Jim, would you be able to provide a preview of what type of research, either continuing or new, will take place in this new edition?
Certainly. And thank you, Molly, for hosting this Q&A. I'm glad to be on the stage with you between 3 ferns.
They're green and growing.
So the expansion is composed of 3 parts. There's the new building that everyone can see. There is the development of new technology facilities. And most importantly, there's the addition of new scientists, up to 100 when we get full occupancy of the new building. What this is allowing us to do is to move into new territory and defend what we're good at. Another way of saying that is there are opportunities that we need different types of people, more people, and different types of space that we don't currently have to pursue. These include, for example, a concept that we've been talking about with Todd Mockler and Tom Britnell and several others about creating a computational crop improvement team. This is using big data as the driver to accelerate or fast forward crop improvement for both large row crops, but very importantly for underserved food security crops. That's a big area, and we're going to carve out a lot of space for that purpose. I talked about the maker group. This is going to be more and more and more important. What you can do for $125 now is what last week we would have had to have paid $25,000 to purchase. Another issue on the price of scientific equipment is kind of astronomical, but you get the point. What we can do is build equipment to suit. We can scale it because those little Raspberry Pi computers, those $35 microcomputers, we can buy 150 of them for not too much money and build an incredibly powerful network of sensors, probes, cameras, remote devices, all interacting wirelessly with our big computers here to collect data, to see things in real time, and to measure things that we simply couldn't do before. This will complement the Bellwether phenotyping
Yeah,
facility, which does a whole other set of things. So a maker lab or a maker space is going to be an important part of the new building. We'll have labs that are configurable so that teams can come in, not just individual labs to stake out their own space. We'll have space that teams can come and use, and when those teams are done, or when they morph into something else, or when those teams have delivered, another team can come in and use the space.
So is everybody, fighting to sign up for the first space?
I think we have a
Clamoring.
we have a very good facility in this current building. So we're not quite like certain universities where you're in a 75-year-old building and you'll sell a few of your kids just to move out of that space. We have scientists who are reasonably happy in the space that they're in, though I think a few will move, and certainly as we hire, we'll put some new individuals and new teams in the space as well.
So what do you think, Sam, that the new addition's going to do regards innovation and the effect on Bridge Park and potential partners?
A couple of things, Molly. One is critical mass and density matters. In an innovation ecosystem, the more folks, the more activity, the more intellectual capital, and more physical capital matters. And so our growth here will not only be great for the Danforth Center, but for this innovation ecosystem that we're building here. Some additional core facilities, like Jim talks about, the maker groups, more space there and more growth rooms and growth chambers will be vital as we fill out Bridge Park #1 and hope to build Bridge Park 2 and beyond. So more scientists, more intellectual activity, more infrastructure is vitally important to continue to grow this ecosystem.
The interchange between the Danforth Center and that ecosystem, of which we're a part, but Bridge, for example, or Helix, it's a critical symbiosis. We provide good ideas, sometimes at least, and talented people, and they start up companies.
Take them to the next step.
They can start companies in either the incubator space or if they're, a high flyer from the get-go, maybe in Bridge. But those companies and other companies in the neighborhood can come and use our facilities. We don't give it away to companies. They have to pay for it. But we have facilities that they would not otherwise be able to have access to in either proximity, quantity, or quality. Our greenhouse space, our growth chamber spaces, for example.
So that really underscores this collaboration of the region, of the Danforth Center with partners.
I think it does.
Before we leave this topic, just say a little bit more. If you're projecting down the road, your vision, what will maybe some of the headlines be coming out of the new center and all this research, the Maker Lab, the computational area?
Yeah, we like everybody like good things to happen. The things that we would define as mission impactful, we call those meaningful outcomes. So if a group of our scientists forms a company, we love it. We celebrate that. We put them up on a pedestal and we talk about it all the time. New company formation from our scientists and our technology. We expect that to happen more and more in the future. We have a mission to feed the world. That is translated through our science and our activity to improve the genetics of food security crops. We also contribute to improving crops like corn and soybean because much of the technology that we develop is applicable to all plants, food security crops in developing regions and large commercial crops as well. Those are headlines that we celebrate. We'll cross the finish line on projects that have been going on for 8 years or so at the Danforth Center. Within the next couple of years, you'll see headlines there where we, if things go according to plan, where we'll solve a major virus disease problem in sub-Saharan Africa. We'll have cassava that is more productive because we're providing tools to farmers in another project to make it less labor intensive. That will be a big headline. I could go on. I could go on and on.
That might move us to slightly another topic people have an interest in. This is my issue. I guard it closely. The October issue last year of National Geographic, where there's a lot of statistics about global food need. You mentioned these, and preserving our environment, and the Danforth Center and the work on tomatoes is in here. So let's talk for a few minutes about sustainability and how the core research of the Danforth Center is geared to looking at sustainability in terms of our environment and producing more food. So, you know, what's happening with what you're doing on nutrient uptake in plants, stress and drought tolerance?
Yeah. So we can distill down when we talk about sustainability in agriculture, in the domains that we work in here at the center, we can distill it down into a couple of categories. Water, nutrients, which is another way of saying fertilizer, excuse me, pest control,
Okay.
and disease control that is less harmful to non-target organisms and the environment more broadly. Sustainability kind of distills down into a few categories like that. How can we produce what we need without losing our topsoil or mowing down more rainforest? Those are the big areas. Sustainability research that we do here, therefore, seeks to understand why plants are drought resistant when they are, and why others are sensitive to drought. Again, that's important because for two reasons. A lot of our crops depend on rainfall. Rainfall is changing, at least the patterns of rainfall are changing, and they will continue to change in the future. That's going to put tremendous stress on agriculture. You're already seeing it in places in this country, like California, and it's already having effects on productivity and just the basic nature of agriculture. People will be surprised to learn, for example, that lettuce, most of which used to come from places like the Salinas area in California or the Imperial Valley under heavy irrigation, because the price of water and the availability of water is becoming so high and restrictive. Lettuce is moving out of California. You know where it's moving to? Arizona. Does that make any sense?
And a quick question for Sam, because I see we're going to be running out of time in a minute here. Sam, how about at Bridge Park and with partners and at Helix? How does sustainability from this concept fit in, not the economic
So very much. You know, the targets are the same. For the innovative companies, they take the research from places like this and they focus those on pain points in the world. Issues like how do we get a plant to take nutrients up more efficiently. Two examples that Jim showed on the screen, two of our tenants, Symyco and New Leaf, are in a space called biologicals. And they look at how plants interact with different microbes that are in the soil or in the air and how those interactions can help a plant be more healthy and more efficient. We have examples today. We are talking to a couple of other companies in that space that will likely put a presence here. You have early stage companies in Helix. So many of the Bridge Park tenants in the ag space that we focus on those areas that are points of challenges in the world, and they're going to take that and turn them into products and services and make money, but also solve the world's great problems. And that's the continuum that we're part of that helps us achieve mission impact to improve the human condition. And we couldn't do it without this ecosystem, this community, and this partnership. And so that's why it's so vital.
Partnership, collaboration. And I just want us to have another comment, again, on partnership, and this would be in education before we leave, because Jim, you touched on that. And we're hearing so much in our community about STEM or STEAM, education equality for our area. Are we doing enough? Is the Danforth Center doing enough for the region in that? And why is it so important?
We're not doing enough, but we're trying. We can't solve the problems of education in this region on our own, obviously, but we have a contribution to make. Again, this is something that we talk about and do a lot at the Danforth Center. It might surprise some people, and this is unrelated to St. Louis, but it might surprise some people that many of the grants that we get for hardcore research also have education and outreach components built into them. It engages our scientists with schools, for example, and it helps get what we're doing in a laboratory or out in a field distilled down so that the public can not only benefit it, but understand it. And if the public understands better science and technology, I think we're going to be in better shape. What are we doing in the region, though? The great need for education in this region is in public education in underserved areas, and we all know where those are. City of St. Louis.
North County.
North County. Ferguson obviously has been in the news. Ferguson schools are not the lowest achieving in the region, but there are great needs in and around the Ferguson area. Terry Woodford Thomas, our Director of Science Education, is passionate about bringing science out of the Danforth Center and into underserved schools. If you plot the number of underserved schools that we're moving into with programs like Green Means Grow, which is a relatively simple program that enables students and teachers to set up light banks and racks and grow plants. Just watching plants grow is incredibly educating. It tells students, it tells people where their food comes from and what it takes to produce food. We have programs like Mutant Millets. This was initiated actually by Tom Britnell when he was up at Cornell.
Sounds like a comic book.
Well, it's anything but. It served over 500 students this year, and it brings not just light banks and racks, it actually brings real science and real research, essentially crowdsourcing of research into the public schools. Now you've got schools who are not only getting familiar with plants and agriculture, but they're learning how to do science.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
everyone understood how science works, I think we would be a little better off at least.
Totally agreed. And before we close, Sam, how about Bridge Park? What's their contribution to STEM and STEAM?
I think well, I just came from a conference on innovation that Wexford, the developer, held, and they had a speaker from the Brookings named Bruce Katz, who does a lot of work in these innovation communities of today and of the future. Maybe I'm stating the obvious, but he said the communities that can figure out how to have a trained workforce are going to be the ones that win. If you don't get this right, St. Louis or Pittsburgh or Cleveland or wherever, you're going to fail. So this is a challenge to us. It's the right thing to do because every citizen should have an opportunity to achieve their full potential. But it's also the smart thing to do because when KDUS in the end, their biggest question was, can I find a skilled, trained, motivated workforce? We have to continue to work so that we can continue to answer. The job that Richard Norris and the community college does is vital, and they're in Bridge Park, and we're so proud of that partnership. The job that Terry Thomas and the rest do. But as Jim said, there's a lot of work to be done. We've got to do it because it's right, and we've got to do it because if we don't, we're going to fall behind. So it's vital.
Well, boy, I had more questions, but I think our time is up. But Jim would like to give you the opportunity to summarize, make any last comments, call to action.
Well, I'll make one final comment. Many of you have seen this virtuous cycle diagram that I've shown in years past. Our flywheel that explains what makes the Danforth Center run and what promotes us and what catalyzes us to excel. There's a couple of pieces to it. We need best-in-class scientists. I think we have them, and we're going to keep attracting them. Best-in-class scientists need best-in-class facilities. We're building them, and we're maintaining them here at the center. Very important. We need great science. That's done by great scientists in great facilities. And then we need ways to take those discoveries and turn them into productive, important outcomes. That's why we're here. That's also why you're here. If we don't do those things, there is no reason anyone should look at the Danforth Center as a supporter, a volunteer, or a donor. But if we are doing those things right, you have a reason to be here. If you do your part, we can get better scientists, better facilities, we can do better science, and our outcomes will happen faster, they'll have more broad impact, which will give you more reasons, and there'll be more friends of yours that you can bring in, which will help us increase our science, increase our outputs and impacts, and so forth and so on. I want to just leave you with that thought. The team that we have here at the Danforth Center doesn't exist without the team out in the community. So thank you so much for all that you've done, for all of your support, the leadership from Jim Knight, George, Jay, Jim, on the volunteer community. Thank you so much. And it's been a real treat having you here this morning. Thank you for coming.